Hi, hope you're doing very well. This talk might be the least poetic sounding of these 6 talks, and it's definitely a topic that didn't seem poetic to me um, when I came to poetry, research, doing research or incorporating research, but I was helped tremendously to see how research can help poetry happen by a book called Ultima Thule by the poet Davis McCombs. And part of that book is a set of poems that are written in the persona of a guide in Mammoth Cave in Kentucky in maybe the 1800s. And I believe the book has a map of the cave in the front, and the poems are those poems, the researched poems, persona poems, are not all of the book, but there are a number of them, and I found them to be powerful and informative, lyrical, really just pretty incredible, because they drew me into the world of the poem speaker, the persona, and helped me to see what his life was like in the caves, out of them, and then also more about what my life is like with my own sorts of caves and being out of them. So I started to see there that doing some research, learning about a topic could really help somehow. It was hard to see exactly how until one day I found myself sort of at a loss, just at a point where I didn't quite know what to do with myself, and I was sitting in a bookstore, and I saw that there was a book there of Edward Weston, the photographer's photography and writing. And I don't remember if I'd even really heard of him. Maybe I'd heard the name, but I opened the book up and started to look at it and was struck by the photographs. Then I also found myself being drawn in by the voice that he wrote in. There was an interesting, to me, sort of sense of grandeur and playfulness. Like, he talked in lofty terms, but seemed aware underneath that he wasn't lofty. He was just getting to kind of do his thing with photography. That's the way I took the way he talked. And I found myself starting to try to write in that voice, and really finding that taking me to interesting places. That I found his world interesting, what I got to learn of it, the world of 1940s mostly photography, and maybe 30s and 40s. 40s are what I'm most familiar with of his work, that time or that era. And I really was interested in looking at somebody who's a creative person, an artist like myself, but in a different medium. to help me kind of look at what I get to do as a poet at a little bit of a distance. But, it wasn't even like I set out with those ideas in mind. And this really helps me to remember when it comes to research and my poetry. It was more like something just grabbed me. I picked up the book and something just spoke to me, and I was blessed with the willingness to just go with it, and found that it kept on going. So going on that same track, I found myself getting more of his writing. A couple of called his day books, or like his journals, were published, and then getting to do some more research about him too. I got to visit Carmel, California, where he had lived for some time, and went to Point Lobos, where some of his photos were taken, and I don't know if I got to see one of the same trees that he took pictures of, but I got to see and take my own very amateur picture of this cypress tree on a cliff, and really sort of felt really enjoyably like I was kind of walking in his shoes at that point. And simply doing that kind of research, not having to become an expert or anything like that, but just getting to dig here and there, metaphorically speaking, getting to read here and there, getting to look around. I found the poems just continued to come and to grow. And I hit a really helpful turning point with those poems when I got to talk to the poet Natasha Trethewey, who just a wonderful poet and a real inspiration to me. She might have won the Pulitzer Prize by then. I don't believe she was poet laureate yet, because if by then she might not have had time to visit the Mizzou where I was the way that she did. But she said, when I got to talk to her about my project, she said, read On Photography, which is a book of essays by Susan Sontag that I've been helped by very much since then. That suggestion that she gave me, doing that research that she suggested, really helped to give, I believe, a backbone to these poems. So the research that I'd gotten to do before was really, it was pretty intuitive, and seeing what jumped out at me, what grabbed me, and trying to write poems out of those things. And then her suggesting a book of theory, a really good book that has clear ideas about photography, including quite a few about Edward Weston, that really helped me to, sorry for the pun, but focus my project, and I found that it brought the research together, and also things that the poems were saying to me about creativity, about gender, about relationships, about obsession. All of these things really came together for me in a way that was really enjoyable, and fun, and just helped the language come. And so the book that came from that, Weston's Unsent Letters to Modati, is a series of poems written in the persona of Edward Weston to Tina Modati, who's another photographer, wonderful photographer, and was his partner for a little while. And for me, they became a really helpful chance to explore some difficult things. The topics I mentioned before, and how to try to find out who you are or who I am. Um, am I my art? Am I my relationships? Am I something else? Am I someone else? Um, it was a wonderful chance to really sort of play with those questions. Another photography pun, but let them develop into kind of the bones of the poems, I believe. And the way the research came to shape these poems um, was that there was a lot of his life in here. But a lot of the details of it and the feelings about it and his attitudes, they weren't really his. They weren't really mine either. They were more of the persona of the poem. Maybe an aspect of me in some ways. And it ended up becoming a way to confront some of my own troubled and troubling attitudes in relationships with women and about art, and to hopefully get some freedom from them. So my experience with this book and with research for poetry overall has been that it doesn't limit my poems at all. It gives me a bunch of colors, to color with or to paint with, that don't replace my own voice, but augment it. So, thank you.